Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our kickoff of our Milwaukie Poetry Series, 13th season. We are very welcome. I'm Tom Hogan from the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee, and we want to welcome you here. We're in a different location than we've been in the past. You've probably seen the information that we've sent out about the season, but we are getting a new library. We missed the Pond House, of course. It was our home for 12 years. We're here with our partners, St. John the Evangelist, for the first 5 readings. So September through January 2020 are going to be here, the first 5. So the second 5 readers for the season will be in the new library, and we'll be sending out information about that just as we go along. I want to make some thanks. Certainly thanks to the City of Milwaukie. The City of Milwaukie has supported us really from the beginning, and we are very, very grateful. We had we featured some community leaders as the featured readers at our First Friday events, and we have First Friday readings here. So we have partnered for the last 7 years with St. John the Evangelist, and we are very grateful. So we have thanks to St. John the Evangelist for partnering with us for those events. And I don't know.
Question: what's going to happen with the Pond House?
Well,
a nice place to have readings.
They are, and at this point there is planning that is going on, but the plan is probably to sell it, because the Pond House is an asset, but we're not absolutely sure. And I think that you all know that, or you probably have seen in the paper, that the library has a shortfall. And largely due to construction costs, largely due to, as from the time when the bond issue was passed, up until when the library started, was a period of time. And we all know the housing and construction market in Portland is booming. And so that's largely due to that. So the best information that we have is that's the plan. And that being the plan, the Pond House needed to be ready for that. There are still some of the architects who are still in the Pond House, I believe, but they're probably going to be vacating pretty soon because we are getting ready to move into the new library. So, yes, we missed the Pond House, but we have a great facility here, and we are really very grateful for St. John the Evangelist in being our partners in all this. So a second thanks to the library, to the Letting Library. We are a committee of the Letting Library, and the library has been great. And finally, we have a poetry committee, and we have a couple members of our poetry committee here, including me, I'm already standing. Do you want to stand or wave? And Emmett Wheatwell back here and Dan Hobbs right here. Can we give them a hand? So as you know, you don't have something happen unless you have people working on it, and we have a very active poetry committee here. And that's been one of the things that really makes the whole series go. We want to welcome our Poet Laureate Emerita, who is here with us tonight, Pauline Peterson. So can we have a welcome to Pauline Peterson. I should say that Pauline was our consultant and has been with us from the very beginning, and she was our very first reader in the series, November 2007. So thank you for all of your support and love throughout. Yes, I agree. Thank you to Pauline. We're also happy to have our November reader with us tonight, Don Colburn. Don is back here in the back, so he's, let's give Don a hand. Our October reader is going to be Matthew Minicucci, who won the Oregon Book Award this year, and then Don will be our reader in November. So that's all on the flyer. If you have not signed up on our group list, please do so. There may be, I want to ask, how many people are here for the first time? Anybody? Wow. Okay. Well, we definitely are going to have a sign-up list A sign-up sheet. Thank you very much for being here. We are extremely grateful for that. I usually at this point hold up my smartphone, but my smartphone is in my bag. But it's just a reminder, if you would silence your telephonic devices, beepers, pagers, smartphones, that would be great. And I think I'm going to ask my lovely wife Jane, who is back there. Do you want to shut the door? Because I think we're getting ready to introduce Cindy and start our reading. We do have some cake. We have a little bit of cake here, which we are going to get out after the reading to celebrate just a little bit. And we've been very excited to have our kickoff reader, our initial reader for our season, Cindy Williams Gutierrez. Cindy has read here before several years ago. It was a great reading. A poet, dramatist. She's inspired by the silent and silent voices of history in her story. Her new collection, Inlay with Nacre? The Names of Forgotten Women, is a finalist for the 2019 International Latino Book Awards. It was awarded the 2018 Willow Book Editor's Choice Poetry Selection and a 2016 Oregon Literary Fellowship. Cindy was selected by Poets and Writers magazine as a 2014 notable debut poet for her poetry collection, The Small Claim of Bones, which placed second in the 2015 International Latino Book Awards. Her poems have appeared broadly, and in 2017 she won the Oregon Book Award for Drama for Words That Burn. I remember seeing that. A dramatization of the World War II experiences of William Stafford, Lawson Anada, and Guy Gulberdon. I think that played at Milagro, at the Milagro Theater. Cindy earned an MFA from the University of Southern Maine Stone Coast MFA program with concentrations in Mesoamerican poetics, drama, and creative collaboration. A passionate educator. I know that. I've seen her teach high school kids. She has taught poetry to K-12 youth through the Portland Art Museum, the Right Brain Initiative, and literary arts writers in the schools, as well as adults through the Council for Teachers of English, the Literary Arts Delve Seminars, and the Stone Coast MFA program. She's a co-founder of Los Potatoes, Portland Latino Writers Collective, and the founder of Grupo de 08, a Lorca-inspired Northwest Collaborative Artist Salon. We are very happy. I would ask you to join me in welcoming our poet for the evening, Cindy Williams Gutierrez.
I left my water. Give me 1 second. Thank you. Well, thank you for the gift of your presence. And my deep gratitude to Tom and the rest of the committee for inviting me to open the season, so to speak. I'm deeply honored to share with you poems from this new body of work. I would like to express my appreciation to Literary Arts for the fellowship. That really marked the first vote of confidence. And then to my editor, Randall Horton, who believed in the manuscript. And to Willow Books of Aquarius Press for the commitment to underrepresented voices. Today is a day of remembrance, of loss, and of the indomitable resilience of the human spirit. So I will ask you in this sacred place to take a moment of silence to remember the lives that were lost and to remember their beloved survivors whose lives were changed forever. It is never too late to remember, to put the pieces of the stories back together. The stories we must hold in order to imagine and to create a more humane future, and in order to fully inhabit the present. Inlay with Nacre, The Names of Forgotten Women, is a book of remembrance. Remembrance of her story, of the stories of women in over 20 countries around the world. I want to acknowledge the epigraph in the book because it is from a poem by our beloved Andrea Hollander. She kindly allowed me to use this epigraph. Her face has disappeared. This happens more often than you think. I will open with the prologue poem. It is a list poem. I invite you to conjure the images in your mind's eye. I will return to many of them throughout the reading. I invite you to create what novelist Deborah Dean calls a memory palace. Deborah Dean is a Seattle-based novelist, author of the book The Madonnas of Leningrad, in which the protagonist, a docent at the Hermitage, builds a memory palace during the German siege of Leningrad. Each day she walks through the galleries, and though there are only empty frames hanging on the walls, she conjures each of the paintings from the memory palace she has built in her mind. So let's see how many images you can hang in your memory palace from this poem. For remembering. Begin with a box made of cypress and cedar. A golden elephant finial bodes good luck in the next life. Letters, postcards, and ransom notes to personages real and imagined. One coutil wedding corset and a collage of newspaper articles. News flees, while editorials leave a lasting impression. So does a corset. Untold bells, uncast ballots and spells, raven quills, blackbird feathers, tarot cards of rearing bears, dance cards and dream diaries. Forget daily journals, since heavenly Morpheus and the hearth-bound Pentatees refuse to cohabitate. Crushed crayon books, charred poems, and words ripped from dictionaries. Warranties, preferably lifetime. Sepia photographs of the disappeared and disappearing. Prisms and pressed white irises, though indigo will summon the goddess and guide your dead. Hair, not locks, braids, tresses, manes of hair. Clothes box, inlay with nacre the names of forgotten women. Inhale the fragrance. My new poetry collection is dedicated to the memory of my mother, and this shawl belonged to her. So I wore it tonight, and the broadside that's available tonight, Willow, is also a poem written for her. This is another one for her, called To My Mother. How do I speak of my eyes, my hands? To speak of them is to speak of you. In each word I write, your name abides. My hands are yours, not my feet, not my mouth. I touch the swell of life, my fingers brim. And of my eyes, I am colorblind. Only the prism of your laughter on dark lakes. Though while I sleep, you trace rivers beneath my lids. So this book explores, by the way, this image was created by a dear friend of mine. You know her, Pauline. Cristina Acosta. She has a whole series of Madonnas, and this is La Sirena Verde, the green mermaid. And it is actually a retablo, and it is painted on wood from a raised barn in Bend, Oregon. That's a pretty cool story. And it's inlaid, as you can see, with mosaic and shell. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, could I be so privileged that she would allow me to use it on my book? And she said yes. So the book is here, and it explores the global oppression of women, and it testifies to their resilience. And yet, even after sending the manuscript in and having it be accepted and editing and all of those steps, the women would not stop talking to me. As soon as I lay my head on the pillow, oh my God. And I just thought, I knew their stories had to be embodied, and I had to create a dramatic work. So, I will tell you about some of the other characters later, but the narrator, there's one poem by her in here, and of course there's a lot of monologues by her in the play, is Enheduanna, a historical character, who was a Sumerian high priestess 4,300 years ago. She lived from 2285 to 2250 BCE. And she was the first known author of the world. Sumerians, as you probably know, invented writing. There were plenty of scribes, but she was the first one who had the chutzpah, that's Sumerian for, right? To sign her name to her poems and to invoke her name in some of her poems. So I said, she has got to be the narrator. She's got to come back and bring these women from the 19th and 20th centuries to tell their stories. So at the top of Act 2, she speaks directly to the audience. You didn't know you were going to get a little teaser, did you? That's from the play. All right. Act 2, Scene 1. I suffer only the ecstasy of birth. I am the mother of writing, the daughter of empire. My father, King Sargon, was the first ruler to give birth to empire. I give birth to symbols inscribed on clay tablets. I am the first to claim what my stylus wields, to sign my name, to sing my name into clay. We Sumerians invented immortality of thought, this writing, 5,000 years ago, and I was the first to be immortalized. All writers descend from me, the tellers of story, the composers of poem and song. I insist on the scribing. Some stories are brutal. I want to turn away. But if I close my eyes, my ears, where is the salve? Where is the mothering? When we bear witness, we do the work of mothering. We break our hearts open to see and to hold. I will begin with 2 poems that bear witness to woman as daughter. This was the first poem I wrote for this collection. I remember I had to create a new folder and just put it there because it was so different from anything else I had written. It is inspired by Half the Sky, turning oppression into opportunity for women worldwide. It is, which is both a book and a documentary by 2 Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times and of Yamhill, Oregon, and Cheryl Wu Dunn. They happen to be a married couple. We begin our journey in Africa with woman as daughter. C word. It's not a flap of skin snipped, nor a covenant with God. It's not in the Torah, not in the Quran. It is a budding clitoris cut. 2 labia petals cut. It is 3 thorns and thread, saving a small hole for urine, the same small hole for semen. So there must be more cutting to release the first baby. Cut again for the second. Cut, cut, cut for the third, fourth, fifth. Cutting of scar tissue, too taut to stretch around a baby's head, too taut to save a mother's life. And it all starts with nerve endings. It starts with a covenant of pain. Starts with a 5-year-old girl, her unsheathed screams. Words ripped from dictionaries. Words ripped from dictionaries. C word. My husband and I and our new little puppy, who's driving me crazy, live very near here in Oregon City. And there's so many poets to admire in Oregon, including present company. And another poet laureate whom I admire, besides present company, is Lawson Inada. One of our true Oregon's finest literary statesmen. Some of you may know from ages 4 to 8, he was with his parents in a Japanese-American internment camp during World War II. And his beautiful book, Legends from Camp, is brilliant. He wrote the first section, the legends section, really in the voice of a child. And he used legends because they are a vital part of his Japanese heritage. And I have no doubt, even though I can't pinpoint this exactly, that this next poem was influenced by his return to legends. This one is called Legend of the Young Storyteller. Once there was a girl who wrote her stories, not in sun-dappled yellows and candy apple reds, but in the rising color of bruised skin. Not on the smooth pages of crayon books, but on scrawled walls of tissue and bone. This girl told stories not in words that flew like birds from her mouth, just a silence that filled a fist. One day, the girl began to count her stories. They were in her fingerprints. She traced them in the sand, story upon story, into a castle of words. Then the tide swept in. Her mouth opened like the O of a conch, and she trumpeted a roiling ocean. Crushed crayon books from the first poem. Crushed crayon books. The next two poems are in remembrance of woman as wife. The first one can be read in more than one way, so I will read it twice. And ardent spirits, which can mean a lot of passionate things, but in this case, one meaning, ardent spirits actually refers to strong alcoholic liquors. And this is what it looks like. Any guesses on how the second way that I would read it? Or the first way?
This way, across.
So across, and then the other one? But no, actually this. Yeah, a little tricky. A little tricky. All right. Arranged marriage. Dutiful silence cinches her torso like a skeletal coutil corset, this carapace of bones. Lacing blushes darker than ardent spirits, silk threading eyelets like blood-shot streamers. Maidhood stripped, two ribbons crossed with tautness until, dizzy, she swoons against the rock in her chest. Dutiful silence, like a skeletal carapace of bones, darker than spirits. Silk like blood maidhood, ribbons crossed, until dizzy against the rock in her chest, she swoons with tautness, stripped. Two shot streamers, threading eyelets, ardent lacing, blushes, coutil corset. This cinches her torso. So there are 7 pages of notes in the back of the book, and the editor didn't give me a hassle at all. It's amazing. And they're in probably about 8-point font. I mean, so you can imagine how many pages they were in the first place. So I think of this experience as being all poet and part investigative journalist. There was a tremendous amount of research that went into this, and for me, this really has become my activism. And I felt that I wanted to offer that to other people so that if you wanted to continue, all the resources are there. Maybe not all, but a fraction of the resources are there in the notes. So I would like to share with you the notes for this poem to give you the context and the impulse. Until the passing of the Married Women's Property Act in 1870, a wife had no independent existence under English law. No right to own property or to enter into contracts separately from her husband, or to sue for divorce or for custody of her children. Anyone remember one coutil wedding corset? Is that hanging in your memory palace? All right. From England to Mexico. From wedding vows to religious vows. to what the church refers to as a bride of Christ. This poem is written in the voice of the first feminist of the Americas, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, a 17th century colonial poet nun who refuses to let me go. I wrote in her voice in the first book, and she's here again. So, Sor Juana, 250 years before Virginia Woolf dreamt of a room of her own, Sor Juana wrote a feminist manifesto in a cell of her own. She wrote that feminist manifesto to the Bishop of Puebla. The bishop did not appreciate her brilliant mind, her audacity to pen a feminist manifesto, all in double entendre, of course, you had to read through the lines, between the lines, or her notoriety with the Spanish court. She was beloved by the Spanish court. So eventually the bishop convinced her confessor, which would be like her mentor, her personal mentor, to join his efforts, and prevailed. Sor Juana was forced to empty her libraries of thousands of books and musical instruments and astronomical instruments, and to give up her writing. She died in her early 40s tending the sick, and all we have is a slim volume of her work. But this poem is for her as I imagine her in my heart. It is a little note that I think she might have sent to the Bishop of Puebla. Just a little note. The form is a decima, which is a Spanish Baroque form. It's a 10-line form. Usually it's octosyllabic, 8 syllables. In English, can be challenging. And then it has a very specific rhyme scheme, which I'm sure you will hear. All right, so I begin with her words. This is directly from her. So in my case, it is not seemly that I be viewed as feminine, as I will never be a woman who may as woman serve a man. A note Sor Juana dreams of sending to the Bishop of Puebla. First, I dream, then I write, between the lines for fools to abide by patriarchy's rules. Make no mistake, I incite the most reverend's tongue to spite. Then I recant, forswear, no nun's desire will lay bare in noble works of art. Ban or burn my books, I take heart. To confess your envy is my prayer. So, charred poems was the image hanging in the memory palace. Crushed crayons, charred poems, and words ripped from dictionaries. From Mexico, we travel here to our own country. And I'd like to give a great shout out to the great late June Jordan. Anybody know June Jordan? Oh yeah, who taught at UC Berkeley and who still is, as far as I'm concerned, the mother of rants. Nobody could do it like June. And so I'll take my inspiration from her. Eugenics rant. A feeble-minded taxonomy for females in the early 20th century spelled compulsory sterility. And for Native American women in the 60s, feeble equaled unmarried pregnancy, or a white coat's verdict of promiscuity. And for 60% of black women in Sunflower County, victims of Mississippi appendectomies, and 1/3 of Puerto Riqueñas in our pulsing territory of bomba dances due to their hyper-fertility and their booming poverty, the U.S. polity decreed the ladies of the South and Commonwealth fail to see their burden on society's health and must tender their tubes or their wombs as the means, as the toll, as the means to minority birth control. But if they were to rise to a higher station, and if they had a voice in this chosen nation, they would certainly vote for sterilization. Uncast ballots. Anybody remember the uncast ballots? Now we journey to Australia. So there are a lot of terms for Aboriginals in Australia. One of them is blackbird. This poem is called Blackbird's Revenge. The epigraph is from an article by Flip Pryor in the West Australian, November 30th, 2010. He wrote, "A new 3-meter-high bronze cast of a pearl diver acknowledges the 19th century practice of blackbirding, the forcible kidnapping of Aboriginal women to dive for pearls, often without breathing apparatus. Once, her ebony body scavenged for breath among cargoes of ocean. Black gleamed from irises, undersea magicians that enslaved the sun. Now, dark wings kidnap the wind. Unshackled talons return pearl eggs to the womb of the sea. And sky, her wild blue desert, drowns out white. Dreamtime horizons." This is what the poem looks like. So when I first thought about the fact that it takes place in the ocean, I actually spaced equal number of lines between each line of text. And my husband, visual artist that he is, informed me that in order to show depth, you actually decrease the amount of space as you go down. So I took that to heart, and it really made a difference. So this is one of the many contributions my darling husband made to the book. Remember blackbird feathers from the first poem, Blackbird Feathers. In addition to Enheduanna as the narrator, the other characters in the play are African woman, South Asian woman, North American indigenous woman, Latin American woman, Northern European woman, and the crone. The crone, the wise elder. Okay? And in this case, the irreverent elder. I suppose she's earned the right to be irreverent, I thought. And the play is quite ritualistic with a reverent tone. So, toward the end, we have to do something a little spicy. And the crone allows us to do this. So I'm going to ask for your help, actually. And I know we're not in the sanctuary, so I hope it's okay to be a little bit irreverent here. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to be the crone, but if I had known you were going to be here, we could have done something, my friend, if I had known. Okay, so the rest of you are the rest of the women as the Greek chorus, okay? So I need somebody to say the word teacher. How about you, Pauline? Yeah, teacher, yeah, the right spot, okay? So teacher, I need someone to say healer. Do we have a healer in the room? Healer, okay. Teacher, healer, goddess. Don't all raise your hands at once. Come on, come on. All right. Goddess, ecstatic dancer, we like it. Teacher, healer, goddess, witch. Yes. All right. So it's going to be one after the other, right? Teacher.
Goddess, witch.
Right, a little louder when the time comes, okay? And then everybody else is going to say, the woman is the same. Okay? Let's try it again. The woman is the same. Okay.
Teacher. Healer.
Goddess, witch.
Thank you. I'm glad. Okay, perfect. Okay, then you have two other one-word questions. One of them, and then you just say these questions once you hear me say the word. So one of them is antediluvian. So I'll say antediluvian, and you'll say, antediluvian, right? Okay, antediluvian. Antediluvian, exactly. And then the other one is hoary. So I'll say hoary, and you'll say hoary, incredulous, okay? Incredulous, okay? All right, just stay with me. All right, got it? All right, here we go. Ballad of the Crone. Is Mary Magdalene a pope, apostle, prostitute, the Gnostic wife of Jesus Christ? In Rome, the point is moot. Old England's hags and fairy tales left nightmares in their wake. Now wizened spinsters' loveless trails may favor lives of saints. Once, Salem claimed the coven's curse, concocting spells and brews. Soon, witch hunts rife with burning stakes. So easy to accuse.
Teacher.
Healer.
Goddess, witch.
The only difference is the man, his hoary choice of name.
Hoary.
Not hoary. Hoary, as in old, outmoded, trite, time-worn, archaic, antiquated, hackneyed, bygone, antediluvian. Anachronistic. Teacher.
Teacher.
Healer.
Goddess, witch.
The only difference is the man, his hoary choice of name. Hoary. All right. The oppression of women, the irreverence of women, and the resilience of women. The next poem is Remembrance of Woman as Warrior. It's written in the voice of a Ghanaian linguistic. Everybody know what a linguistic is? Staff, right? All right. Since it's in the voice of the Ghanaian linguistic, you will find out very soon what it is. Okay. And if we have Q&A, you might ask me, how did that come about? Okay. It starts also with an epigraph. It's an Ashanti proverb from Ghana. Although the hen knows it is dawn, she leaves it to the rooster to announce. A linguistic speaks up. My body is a long, lithe tongue to plead, to barter. My skin beaten golden into coils of snakes. My finial, an elephant poised to trumpet. I stand in the hands of the sturdy linguist, between royalty and the rest who rely on his fluency to represent their interests. But I am merely a mouthpiece, a drum for announcing and renouncing, for the growl, the offering. I am totem of wildcat and bush buck. I am a toke, gangowe, a hatse. Bell, gong, beaded gourd, beaded rattle of gourd. I am the rooster that does not sleep. And if I were to stick up for my matriline, I would defer to the golden stool, the seat of the Ashanti soul, and conjure Ya Ashantiwa's return. Let the queen speak, not me, for valor. If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we, the women, will. We will fight for unity and the end to colonies. Let her crowing usher in the dawn. So her brother was the ruler, and the men were about to give up. They were fighting the British. And she said, not so quick. I'm not saying they won, but she kept going. She and the women decided to keep fighting. All right, For Remembering was the first poem in the book, and you probably figured out by now what that poem is doing, right, with all the different images. And in the play, it actually appears near the end. So all of the women have ritual baskets with all of these tangible things that actually make their stories that have been silenced tangible. And so they place each of those things, in that box, in that cypress and cedar box, so that the stories become embodied. So I started with the first poem, and I'm going to end with the last poem in the book. Two images, raven quills and dream diaries, relate to this poem. And this is actually how it appears on the page. And in the play, by the way, the crone plays the raven woman. Yes. Dream diary, invocation. The moon's unblinking eye slices the dark. A windless night, and the aspens stand mute. In this circle of trees, I throw up my hands, rending the thick air, rising and bowing again and again. My splayed fingers claw the emptiness, pregnant with everything lost, with the bound feet of unwanted girls, the kidnapping of school girls, trafficking of child girls, torture of activist girls, beating of wife girls, the molesting of small, boned girls. A low, gurgling croak. She is here. I want to quiet the shrill, but there are too many predators, too many nests disturbed. I scan the trees for wings to shroud darkness, render it invisible. I can only rasp, raven woman, call to me with light. The darkness lurches. She tips one wing at the sky, the other at the grove. These aspens, now a radiant silver beneath the new moon. And her gurgling turns to grating. Stand tall among the upright people. The air quakes as her wings breathe the trees like lungs. In her wake, a murmuring stir like aspen. Make a rush of sound that shakes the world. Thank you. May we make a rush of sound to shake the world. May we make a rush of sound to shake the world. Every time I read from this work or perform this work, I feel I make an offering. And I'm deeply grateful to you for listening with an open heart. I can feel it. And I believe we have time to engage so that you can offer, yes? Responses, dialogue, observations, whatever you would like to offer.
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Yes.
When do we get to see the play?
Oh, so soon. I'm in conversations, and my dream is International Women's Day of 2021. So that's March 8th. So I think we should open on Thursday, March 4th, and just run the whole month, Women's Month. What do you think? All right. Indiegogo or whatever. Thank you. I appreciate that. Vote of confidence. It makes a difference. It does. It really does. Okay.
I want to ask about research, about you're getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been interested in it, and I know that.
Mm-hmm.
When did you actually start doing research with an idea? And did you have a lot more material than you used? And how did you decide what you were going to use?
Yeah, I don't know exactly the year, but I mean, the other book came out in 14.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it was around 16, because it was when I watched that documentary, Half the Sky. And, there were so many stories there. And obviously I was struck by one in particular, and I wrote that poem. And, I read it one time, actually, when we were together at Stonehenge. Yeah. And really, I had no idea if it was going to go anywhere. It was just this one lonely poem. And then I knew, though, when I got my MFA, we had to write about our writing, which I think is one of the most valuable things to do. And I remember writing about having two lenses, a cultural lens and a feminist lens. And so I realized, my first book is very much about Mesoamerican culture, the Aztec culture, the Nahua culture. And the second part of the book actually is also feminist. But I started to realize that really was going to be the seed for the second book, was this feminist lens. And so I think I went back to that poem. And then I started thinking about other situations that I knew about, for example, like sati, the self-immolation of the widow on the husband's pyre in India. But what I didn't know was, when was that banned? It turns out it was banned by the British in 1861. And did anything else happen? Well, actually in the 1990s, an 18-year-old. We don't know if she committed it or if the whole village forced her to do it, right? And so I wanted stories that were more of the 19th and 20th century, more contemporary, because I wanted this idea, that this is still happening and it's happening everywhere, this sense of accretion, right? So I started with some of the things that I knew, the Magdalene laundries, things like that, and just started research. So I would have, sometimes I might have 50 pages of research for one poem, right? And so there's lots of research for one poem, and then you try to figure out how to create art from that, right? And which point of view, and what's the form. One of the things that I did with form, I'm not sure I read any of those tonight. I don't think I did. But in some cases, I researched forms associated with the culture, and I actually wrote in those forms out of respect for the culture, for telling that story, right? So it's not about writing other poems in that form, but for that particular story. So the poem about Sati is actually, I believe it's called a Doha. And then there's also a Pashto form about an Afghan girl that I also used. So that was another way, another form of research in terms of how to turn it into art and using forms that were intrinsic to or germane to the culture. Yeah. So I'm not sure I did any research for, some story that I didn't use, because I think you might have been asking that. I don't think I think that, so I would keep them, I had a sort of a map, right? And so I would keep track, because I wanted to have this, I wasn't going to have every single country, right? But to make sure all the continents were represented and that it was a bit of a balanced view. That was important, so I would really keep track of that, And I think that because of that, when I started thinking about the play, I already sort of had this geographic idea in mind, and so it came up with the characters by continent. Yeah. Thank you.
How did you come up with the one that you read two different ways?
Yeah,
How did you
the
come
arranged
up
marriage.
With that form and how it, that one, and what was your process?
Well, I knew because the metaphor is a corset, and I just thought about the whole idea of lacing, right? So I immediately started with that. And I did play around even with lacing, and I thought, like, oh my God, if people are, it's kind of a Mae Swenson thing. If any of you are familiar with Mae Swenson, she did all kinds of forms. And so I thought, well, I don't want it to be completely difficult to follow. But so I started just with those columns, and then having it read across. And then just playing with the language, I realized that, this was something that I could go down and up the other. And then I talked to a couple of poets about how could I give the reader a clue, and so we came up with that idea. Yeah.
It was very cool.
So, yes.
I wasn't listening for this the first time in your poems, and so you may have addressed this. I think one of the hardest things with female appropriation within a culture, like bookbinding or done in relation or even a corset, is that it's often women who continue the practice against women, if you want to put it
Right.
that way.
Right.
And so I don't. I think that's always a tough one to reconcile.
Right, it is. And in the play, actually, the other women are the villagers. And so it's an interesting tension, right? Because basically the widow is, she's sort of a hologram, right? She kind of, she comes back from the dead, to embody this story. And then there's this argument, it's almost like a trial between Northern European woman, because she's standing for the British Empire, who actually outlawed the whole thing, and she's outraged by it. And then all the other women in the chorus who are defending it because it's part of their culture. So it's a very interesting, it's kind of a little, triangle in terms of how the scene plays out. And I thought that was important to have an example of that in the play, because that is part of, the same thing with C Word. That's definitely carried out by women. The organizations to stop it are also run by women, right? Yeah, because we're all human, huh? Yeah. Yes.
Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Several years ago, I saw a play at Ashland about a Mexican nun.
It was Sor Juana.
Was that the one?
Yes.
Yes, it was a wonderful play.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was about her.
Actually set after her death, I believe, or maybe it jumped back.
Yes, it was. That's right. She's
Yeah.
not actually in, her character is not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I saw that one too.
Good.
Yeah, I think the playwright's from Chicago, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, thank you all.
Okay,
for
thank you
being
so much.
here.